when I talk to people, like, I see where I'm at today, but I know where I come from. And it's kind of hard to almost separate that. I'm almost, not in a way I'm kissing my own ass, but I'm amazed at what a human being can actually do. So when I start talking to myself in the third person, it's strictly because I know that I literally made this human being out of just like a whole bunch of scraps. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't, I wasn't a mechanic. I wasn't a carpenter. So I didn't know how to do any of this shit. Mm-hmm. I wasn't trained in how to build a human being from nothing. Like my mom didn't train me. My dad didn't train me. Life didn't train me. Well, life did train me. Yeah. Life did train me, correction. And I started putting this scrap metal together. I'm like, I wonder what the fuck's gonna happen. The first year I tried to do was all fucked up. And after a while, I started learning more and more and more through pain and suffering. I started learning so much about stuff. Before I knew it, man, I built this beautiful car. And I'm like, how the fuck did I do that? And I knew how, and I know how to do it because I have all the tools. Through all the failure I went through trying to build this person who's Goggins. Mm-hmm. Not the smartest person in school. I had that issue. So my big thing was how I addressed that problem was I had to sit down. Each thing that is wrong with you has to be a focal point. You can't look at this gigantic list and say, I gotta change all this shit. My God, this is crazy. No. You take off the first one. I wanna be smarter. For me, that was my thing. I have to become more intelligent. I have such a severe learning disability, man. I can't retain shit. I had to now get that one thing and then strategize in that one problem. How can I do this? I'm not gonna learn like you. I'm not gonna learn like anybody else. How am I gonna figure this out? So I then figured out, okay, where are my strengths here? Where are my weaknesses in learning? All right, man, how am I gonna do this? And I figured out a way to do it by just strategizing. So how I learn to this day, if I have a big manual to study, I will have to get a bunch of spiral notebooks from the daggone store, and each page, I have to write each page out, maybe 10 times, each page over and over again, to then put it to memory. So when the question came up, page 71 was where I remember seeing this, and I can recall it that way. And that's how I did it. So you gotta strategize on each problem you have in life. Slowly break down that problem. Don't think about all the problems you have, just one at a time. And before you know it, you fix all these problems, but you cannot focus on all of them, just on the one thing at a time. The one thing that made me who I am today is being vulnerable. It's breaking myself down to the absolute rock bottom and being able to tell people who I am. And that's how I fixed it. Literally, being able to look somebody in the eye and say, you know what, man, I have a whole bunch of character problems, character flaws. I've lied about this. I've cheated here. I'm insecure here. This isn't the real me. I lied to you about that. I wanted your acceptance in life. All those things happen, but the thing about it is that we get judged so quickly by who we are. We don't know. We don't go to where it happened. You know, life created this person, me. Life created me to be this fucked up person that I was back in the day. And I had to realize, man, that's okay, man. It's not my fault. Now I gotta go back and fix this shit though. Mm-hmm. So a lot of this isn't your fault, why you do some things you do, why you feel the way you feel. But no one's coming back to save your ass. You have to go back to where the shit started, wherever that place is for everybody, and have the courage to go back there and start fixing what broke you. Mm-hmm. And that's when I was like, hey, I'm fucked up. I'm gonna go back and fix this.
They say it's more difficult to rule yourself than to rule a city. And that's the truth, because you're complicated and there are horrible monsters inside of you that need to be tamed and to be brought into alignment and submission so that you can be a powerful and useful person. And I gave away the Future Authoring Program as part of this video I made suggesting to millennials that instead of rushing out there to change the world by changing other bad people, that they should look inward and sort themselves out properly. And if you have a memory that's more than 18 months old, approximately, and when you pull that memory up to mind, if you still have an emotional reaction, that means you haven't fully articulated the memory. You haven't analyzed it causally. You haven't freed yourself from its grasp, and you're carrying it like a weight. And your brain responds to that. Like the more weight you're carrying like that, more baggage, let's say, the more of the stress hormone cortisol your brain produces, and cortisol makes you old.
You know, you can learn to kind of watch yourself like you're watching a stranger, but you have to adopt a position. It's a position of radical humility, I would say. Both humility in two senses. So one sense would be the humility of recognizing your ignorance. So you have to understand that you don't know who you are. And that's not easy to understand because you think you know. But then, you remember you can't control yourself very well. You're not very disciplined. You're full of flaws. Maybe you don't know yourself as well as you think. But it's hard to get low enough to understand how deeply it is the case that you are ignorant about who you are. Now, there's an upside to that too, which also is that you're also ignorant about who you could be. And so the discovery of that, is some reward for the horror of determining who you actually are. And then I would say, well, then you watch yourself, and you attend to your conscience, and you watch yourself like you're watching a stranger. You watch what you say and you listen.
Starts with being self-aware, with being able to detach. Because if you can't detach from yourself, then you can't see yourself. And so people ask, how do you detach from yourself? How do you learn to do that? And a good drill for this is try to imagine the way other people see you and what other people are thinking of you. And one place where this happens, and it definitely happened to me, is when I started getting put in charge of things. I started thinking about other people's perspectives. What are they seeing? If you're in charge, then what do your subordinates see you do? What do your subordinates hear you say? What kind of representation are they receiving? And if you work for someone else, it's the same questions. What does the boss see me do? What does the boss hear me say? What kind of representation am I making of myself to my boss? And then you start thinking about, what do your friends and family think? What do they see? What do they hear? And so the question becomes, how well do you represent yourself? What shortfalls do you have? Now, when you first start looking, it's like you're looking at an overgrown lawn. There are some big, obvious problems, so you do a broad, just kind of general cut of the grass. You fix some of the big, easy problems that are obvious. And once you've done that, once you've gotten rid of some of those big, obvious problems, you notice some more detailed problems. So then you handle them, and once you've got those handled, you see even smaller and more detailed issues, so you start trying to fix them.
Small town mentality is a real mentality. You've got to be able to get out and let your mind see open-mindedness. Because a small town, what it does to you is it closes your mind. Completely closes your mind. Not everybody. This isn't everybody. A lot of people. You have to be able to go out there and create open-mindedness. You need space. You need space to see the world. Like a lot of racism, a lot of ignorance in the world, it comes from people not being out and seeing other things, seeing other people, seeing all kind of shit. That's why we judge so harshly, because our minds are so closed to the reality of life. The accountability mirror is something that you have to be so real and raw, and you can't talk to yourself in a nice way. But you can't get so bad in that accountability mirror where you get it twisted and you start putting yourself down all the time. You gotta call yourself for what you are, but you also gotta give credit where credit's due. Are you accountable for what you're doing? Are you accountable? If you're not real and raw with who the fuck you are, nothing's gonna change.